In the future, humans might look like this. They'll have long, tall bodies equipped to live in space, or they could look like this. They might be forced to become short and fat to protect them from disasters happening on Earth. But none of that might happen if we don't start working on these problems today. Well, we're going to show you the people who are building the future of humanity. But first, let's look at what a possible future might look like just 100 years from now. Which actually isn't that far away. Just think 3 to 4 generations from now. Think about your great-grandparents. They don't look that different from you. So maybe things won't change a ton, right? Well, wrong, because the changes we'll experience will go much further than simple genetics. Technology will also play a key factor in how our human bodies change. I'm talking about bionic limbs. Today, prosthetic limbs are largely used by people born with congenital deficiencies or amputees, people who may have suffered horrible accidents or injured soldiers. But in the future, this technology might be used by anyone for enhanced performance. Soldiers might be equipped with an exoskeleton that allows them to lift cars. As the technology of bionic limbs gets faster, more nimble, and smarter, even civilians might want to get a mechanical upgrade. And it's not just limbs that will go bionic. As medical device companies crack the code, we might start getting fit with bionic organs too. Your pancreas, your eyes, your heart, all might be non-organic. And maybe the smartphones will be the control center tracking how your bionic organs are functioning and delivering upgrades. And maybe we'll order up a boost whenever we need to perform an amazing physical feat, like running a marathon or even running a half marathon or just a fun run. And if one of these bionic parts breaks down, well, we'll just pop into the body shop around the corner, get it fixed. You might also want to insert a brain chip that fuses your brain's gray matter with silicon. The mind meld is already underway. DARPA, the US military's Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, recently put a chip inside a man's brain, which gave him an incredible new ability. With the help of this chip, he could telepathically control a number of drones. A more commonplace use of a brain chip might be to give us an enhanced photographic memory or instant access to vast amounts of data. Imagine being able to Google anything without pulling out your phone, but these neural chips could go above and beyond just regular data and news articles. You might be able to design your own senses, yeah. What if you had an antenna implanted in your skull that gave you the power to hear color waves? Yeah. You could hear sounds when your brain picks up ultraviolet rays and infrared light. Or you might be able to detect vibrations in the earth and be able to predict earthquakes. As our minds fuse with machine intelligence, it's possible that this becomes a two-way street. The chip gives us access to unlimited data and new senses. But then humans can also upload their thoughts into the chip. I'm talking a complete merging of our gooey, pulpy brains with cutting-edge neural implants. I've got at least 16 megabytes of info in this thing. But then, something even more mind-blowing might happen. We could connect all the neural chips. Then, multiple humans could be part of one interconnected neural network. Welcome to the hive mind. Now we'll come back to that in a bit, but right now let's take a look at some of the biggest medical breakthroughs on the horizon. The kind that don't sound like they're straight out of a sci-fi movie. Sure, we might see some bionic limbs and brain chips, but some of the most important innovations of the future will actually be built on the tech we already have, like X-rays, MRIs, and CT scans. These life-saving procedures help detect cancer, diagnose diseases early, and guide critical treatments. But here's something most people don't know. The materials that make those scans possible are facing a massive global shortage. These special liquids used during medical scans are called contrast agents. When you drink them, or you get them through an injection, they highlight specific areas like organs, blood vessels, or tumors, helping doctors see what's happening inside your body more clearly. The minerals used to make them, barium, iodine, and gadolinium, are in high demand but short supply. And since North America imports 100% of its contrast media, our access to these essential drugs is at serious risk. That's where today's sponsor, Voyager Pharmaceuticals, comes in. They're the only company in North America that owns its own supply of these minerals and manufactures contrast agents domestically. This means lower costs, more control, and a secure supply chain. Right now, they're gearing up to launch their beryllium mining project in British Columbia, slashing production costs from $7,300 to just $650 per ton. They're also developing a next-gen iodine extraction system in the US that's faster, more efficient, and doesn't rely on outdated overseas processing. By 2026, Voyager plans to launch FDA-approved contrast agents in the US, and they're already rolling them out in Canada. partnering with top global manufacturers along the way. Now this isn't just smart business. It's critical healthcare because when hospitals don't have access to contrast agents, patients don't get the scans they need. And that's a crisis we can prevent. So yes, the future might bring mind-blowing medical upgrades, but companies like Voyager are proving that some of the most vital innovations are happening right now, ensuring we protect the tools we already rely on. But if you're into the kind of cutting-edge tech that does feel like it's ripped straight from a sci-fi movie, you're going to love this next part. Some friends of ours have been developing real working prototypes of futuristic gear you've only seen on the big screen. I'm talking real-life Iron Man suits, actual lightsabers, and exoskeletons that give you superhuman strength. Sounds impossible, right? Well, we sent our reporter Rose to their headquarters to see it all in action.
At Hacksmith Industries, we take fictional ideas from comics, movies, and video games, and then we make real working prototypes. Things like Iron Man tech and lightsabers.
These are YouTubers who are engineering the future of humanity. They made me realize that the future is a lot closer than we think.
This trip was mind-blowing. I got to play with a lightsaber. Cool. A Hulkbuster. Even a power loader. Hi, Peter. Check this out. So freaking cool.
Okay. Well, while Rose looks at what's happening right now, I'm going to look even further into the future. Let's fast forward another 150 years. We're now looking at a human 250 years into the future. If you're alive in the year 2275, well, you're going to have to be pretty tough. These humans would have survived a massive change in climate. At this point, Earth would have suffered some extreme weather changes. Sea levels could rise up to 9 or 10 meters, and violent storms, hurricanes, and cyclones would have become commonplace. There may be some tech solutions that emerge to deal with some of these problems, especially in North America and Europe. But many of the world's poorest countries won't have access to this advanced technology. People living in coastal areas like Bangladesh or Thailand might not survive as the waters rise. So, the survivors, well, like Darwin said, they'll have to be the fittest. For more on this, let's take a look at bears. First off, we see that the biggest ones, the polar bears, live near the North Pole in the Arctic. Moving south, the closer we get to the equator, the smaller the bears get. That's because small bodies are better at staying cool. And with the world warming up, any humans that can keep themselves cool will have a survival advantage. So, humans will likely become a little smaller, reversing an earlier trend of getting taller. That trend completely bypassed me. In addition to getting smaller, more slender bodies, humans might have long, gangly limbs. Well, these will help to cool the body since they have more surface area. And, in a warmer world, well, hearts don't have to work as hard to pump blood to keep the body warm, so hearts might get a little smaller. And don't worry, we'll still have Valentine's Day, just in a size 0. But while some things are getting smaller, other things are getting bigger. Talking about your ears, human ears might get a little larger as a way to dissipate heat. And noses, which were once long and narrow to help heat up air before it entered the body, well, they may get smaller and wider.
Rose, VO. So, Ian, tell me what we're doing here. Ian, VO. Well, we have a real lightsaber. Hacksmith's gone through tons of different versions of these lightsabers. They've had one like this. We started with a steel rod with a heating wire wrapped around it, and even this one. And then from there we come to this version. Rose, VO. This is like the lightsaber of my dreams, but also pretty dangerous. So this is basically a pipe. Cool. That's really safe to hear. It's also not ready yet.
Narrator Vo. But despite the sketchiness, maybe the only way to know if these sci-fi ideas are actually possible is to try them ourselves. We're about to burn through metal.
Rose, VO. This thing felt like magic. 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Burning hot. Dangerous magic. I couldn't help but feel like an actual Jedi. I even got to cut through some glass.
Narrator VO. But wait, how does all this work? Well, in Star Wars, the lightsabers work a little bit differently. They're activated by a magic crystal that can cut through almost anything instantly. The blade is also contained plasma that's stabilized through a magnetic field. Narrator VO. What you're seeing here from Hacksmith is more of an open plasma flame, one that's powered by a separate liquid propane and oxygen tank. Narrator VO. And despite it being incredibly hot, I noticed the lightsaber still takes some time to cut through objects like metal and glass, and there's no way it could cut through a human arm like this. Narrator VO. The reason why is pretty simple. Even if something is incredibly hot, it still requires sustained contact and time to cut through. In the case of a human arm, it would be cutting through things like water, bone, and muscle. That's a lot of stuff. And with a blade this size, it still takes some time. Narrator, VO. So how do you make lightsabers like this a reality? Well, based off what we see in the movies, we're looking at a lightsaber that's about 36,000 F. That's hotter than the center of the sun. Powering something like that would require us to invent new materials that could survive at these kinds of temperatures. Narrator, VO. So, getting a lightsaber that hot is pretty unrealistic, at least where things stand today. But that doesn't mean we won't get close. Hacksmith is working to get their lightsabers smaller and more portable than ever before. They even have a little baby one you could buy. I think I like the big boy better, and they seem pretty hopeful for the future.
Hacksmith team, VO. We see a future where we build real working lightsaber. I'm not sure how commercially available they will be, or legal. Yeah, we are working on real lightsaber technology and we'll get to that. Even though they might not be what we see in the movies, they're pretty darn close.
So, Peter, as you're looking 500 years into the future, are lightsabers a part of it? Okay, let's jump a half a millennium ahead. It's now the year 2525. Humans could have chips in their brains to enhance their memory, but it won't just be fancy tech doing all the heavy lifting. We might be able to change our bodies on a molecular level. At this point, you're no longer at the mercy of your genes waiting for your body to evolve. Gene editing and sophisticated molecular techniques will be in use, creating human bodies with better traits. You might have heard about this technology. It's called CRISPR, and it's a technique to edit the makeup of your DNA or to swap out bad DNA for good DNA. And think of a pipe that has a section that's rotting. You can fix it by cutting out the rotting part and replacing it with strong new piping. Well, CRISPR is a bit like that. Unhealthy genetic material is removed and replaced by healthy DNA. By 2525, scientists might figure out how to do more things with it to yield incredible results like changing your entire body. These days, scientists are using CRISPR technology to treat sickle cell anemia. But today, we're only good at fixing diseases where there's a single problem mutation. In the future, we'll get good at fixing things that involve multiple mutations. Kind of like going from fixing a leg with a single fracture to treating an entire body that's totally broken up. Take cancer, for instance. By 2525, the human body will be rid of it because we'll use CRISPR to knock out cancer-causing genes or use it to build turbocharged T cells to fight the cancer. CRISPR could also help blind people see. It's already being used today to help children who were born with vision loss. So in a couple hundred years, well, we could easily see a cure for blindness. Today, governments have put guardrails around what CRISPR can be used for, but it's possible that 500 years from now the picture will be very different. People could use CRISPR to create designer babies. Maybe with a snip of the molecular scissors you could give your baby purple eyes and red hair. It's possible that other traits like height and metabolism can also be edited to order. Instead of taking Ompic to lose weight, people will just go in for CRISPR to stay thin. Now, will these tools be available only to the rich? Or will anyone have access to them? Well, maybe like home laser treatments, they'll be do-it-yourself-at-home CRISPR kits. Yeah, it sounds crazy now, but that far into the future it's definitely a possibility. But maybe the future won't be about CRISPR. Instead of trying to change our insides, we might try to strengthen our bodies from the outside. Humans might have exoskeletons like from the movie Aliens. A real-life power loader. Hacksmith built this over the course of 3 years. It's so strong that it can lift up and destroy an entire car. I felt super powerful in this thing. I was taller than LeBron James, maybe even 2 LeBron. The Hacksmith crew admits that this specific model doesn't have a ton of real-world applications, but that doesn't mean that it's completely useless. Aliens came out in 1986 and that was one of the first exoskeletons ever seen. And now, almost 40 years later, companies other than Hacksmith have ran with this idea and are creating some incredibly cool tech. A company in Korea is developing an exoskeleton that can help people in wheelchairs walk again, and militaries are developing what is essentially an Iron Man suit. So if we're already at this point in 2025, I think it's safe to say that the future of this technology will get even more advanced. But what else is going to happen? Okay, jumping ahead to 750 years from now, using our advanced gene editing techniques, a new version of human is being engineered. One that's perfectly adapted to, and one who can survive, Mars. What does that human look like? Well, let's take a look. Mars gravity is about 40% of what we feel on Earth. The muscles and bones in our human body have evolved to work against this gravity. But on Mars, without modifications or regular exercise, our muscles would waste away. So, taking out our nifty CRISPR scissors, we'd give ourselves a modification that would slow the deterioration of muscle fibers under low gravity, and maybe give ourselves some lighter bones like those that we might have evolved with if we had originated on Mars. The second major adaptation that would be needed would be the ability to deal with the radiation on Mars. See, Mars is hit with 40 to 50 times the amount of radiation that we get here on Earth. Now scientists are working on a modification for this. They're figuring out if we can identify genes that can be turned on or off to protect against acute radiation sickness. But that same solution can be applied when designing a Martian body. For clues, we might have to look at someone we usually think is a disgusting little pest, a cucaracha cockroach. This guy is resistant to radiation. Figuring out his secret and applying it to our future human will create a powerhouse that can survive Mars. Now we can make all the adaptations we want to this future human, but let's be real, there's one crucial thing missing, and that's food. Oh, and the Mars body will probably have its DNA tweaked so that it's resistant to dust. If there's DNA that controls how sensitive a person is to dust, we'd want to dial that way down. The Martian surface extremely dusty. Okay, finally, can the Mars body be adapted to breathe carbon dioxide? That's one thing that probably isn't going to work. Scientists say we'd be better off creating a source of oxygen for humans to breathe on Mars than trying to modify our metabolism in this bizarre way. Our bodies burn sugar using oxygen. It's an evolutionary adaptation that we've had for a good 2 billion years. Sorry, future Martians, we're not giving you carbon dioxide breathing lungs, at least not yet. Alright, check out the future Martian. Unlike us Earthlings, the Martian has puny muscles and a lightweight body, maybe darker skin to combat that high radiation zone, and very hairy nostrils as a defense against the dusty atmosphere. Plus some mucus-producing glands for additional protection. Better pack an extra box of tissues for your trip to Mars and some grooming tools. This Hacksmith adventure wasn't just about fun toys, even though those were awesome. James, the creator of this channel, was working on some out-of-this-world technology in his office. He showed us this robotic arm that can perform surgeries.
So the tiny little gripper you see here, yeah, that's actually part of a couple $1 million surgery robot that surgeons would actually use for teleoperation surgery.
Back in 2010, the company behind this technology performed surgery on a grape. As silly as this may sound, it shows something really cool. Robot arms like this could be super good at surgeries. And they already are. It works like this. A surgeon gets behind the console and is able to move the robotic arm. I got to play around with it a bit, and it was incredibly intuitive. It would take my exact movements but then put them on a smaller scale, allowing me to be much more precise. I also didn't have to worry about my hands shaking. The consequences of this becoming more mainstream are massive. Eventually, we could get to a point where people aren't even doing surgery anymore. Robots have gotten so good and so precise that it wouldn't make any sense having shaky human hands performing heart surgery. In the future, people could buy surgical robots and just program them. They can scan their body, DIY plastic surgery. Yeah, and just do robot what you want BBL at home.
But James might have some other ideas on how this tech is used. Like, everyone always thinks about the apocalypse where, like, there's lots of survivors. But what happens if you're the only survivor? If I was the only survivor, I'd need to know how to do surgery on myself. True, but it's probably really hard to do surgery on yourself. I know some surgeons have done it. But if you're wearing VR goggles and you can disassociate from your body and control the robot, I think it's possible.
Okay, that's all fine and good, but let's see what happens 1,000 years into the future. Science will have all the tools needed to create the perfect human. What features will they have? Well, our future human will have features designed to survive something devastating. Meet crash-proof Graham, who can survive a car crash. But this body wouldn't just be used for car crashes, it could be used to survive anything. Tornadoes, earthquakes, maybe even asteroids. This human in the year 3000 will have a brain protected within a bigger, thicker skull with a protection cushion of additional fluid and ligaments holding the brain in place. A short, thick, strong neck can protect against whiplash where the head jerks rapidly back and forth. Okay, it may not be what we in the 21st century find the most attractive, but to 30th century bionic eyes, this would be the mark of a survivor. One whose neck vertebrae can withstand any situation. This future human will also have super strong ribs to protect the heart and lungs and a thick skin that would be resistant to cuts and injuries. Because this human would have survived multiple climate disasters like hurricanes, tornadoes, evolving skin that protects against getting injured again and again, the joints of the future human will be able to fold in new and different ways too. You know, today our joints only bend in one direction. That makes us more prone to injury. but 30th century humans may have joints that can bend any which way, making us extremely flexible. In addition to fewer injuries, pretty sure that would allow us to invent some new and cool yoga positions. How about backward bending dog? Now, future humans won't just be made crash-proof. There's a whole host of problems with today's human body that we'd get to fix in the future. We can borrow a few tricks from Dr. Alice Roberts, who has some ideas about improving the natural evolutionary process. 30th century humans could have eyes like an octopus without that pesky blind spot. In the future, we'll get the full picture. I told you earlier about how humans would be growing bigger ears to cool off, but instead of big flappy elephant ears, they might actually be designed more like a cat's to amplify sound and help us hear better as we get old. Now, I've always thought that having this little bit of shared single pipe for both breathing and passing down food was a big design flaw. Well, our new human model would have two separate pipes so that food never goes down the wrong way. Say goodbye to the Heimlich maneuver. The 30th century woman would have a key modification that makes having a baby a whole lot easier. See, the human pelvis has evolved to support us while walking upright, but it's not big enough for one important thing, allowing big-headed babies to come out easy. So, childbirth is painful and difficult. Dr. Alice Roberts suggests a modification in the style of a kangaroo, giving birth to smaller babies and then letting them hang out in a human pouch to grow bigger. We'd probably need some pretty advanced gene editing to pull this one off, but a millennium from now we'll have figured it out. Now, as the planet gets hotter, humans may adapt by getting a bit darker to protect ourselves from UV rays. But with gene editing technology, we can do way cooler things with our skin color. Our old friend the octopus can change its skin color on demand to camouflage itself. Splice this trait into humans and we can all change color to suit the occasion, like hiding or St. Patrick's Day partying or fake tanning. How about the human leg? A nimbler leg could be helpful, kind of like an ostrich. The scientists would tweak our DNA to make the lower leg less muscly and make the feet light. So we'd be incredible runners. And our spines tend to get compressed as we age, and we can get herniated discs. So the 30th century human will have a shorter spine and a wider pelvis for stabilization like a chimpanzee. And some of our internal hardware will also undergo a rewrite. To prevent heart attacks, our arteries will become far more interconnected, and we'll replace our lungs with a more efficient system using a combination of air sacs and lungs like birds. The 30th century human still looks a bit like you and me today, but with the big cat-like ears, the changing skin color, the marsupial pouch, short torso, and the ostrich legs, the future human is beautiful, astonishing and terrifying all at the same time. Regardless of where the future of humanity goes, there's no doubt that things will start to get incredibly strange. We already see glimpses of it today with things like Neuralink and ChatGPT and VR glasses. It's only a matter of time before things start getting more integrated into our bodies. But what if we didn't have to worry about that at all? Because maybe Earth will look very different in 1,000 years. Well, that sounds like a story for another what if.